The moment Sarah walked into the coffee shop and saw the little girl sitting beside him, her heart stopped. This wasn't what she had expected. After 3 weeks of thoughtful messages and late-night phone conversations that had made her believe in connection again, Marcus had brought a child to their first date. A beautiful little girl with cornrows adorned with colorful beads, no more than 6 years old, sat quietly coloring in a notebook while Marcus stood up nervously, his eyes searching Sarah's face for a reaction he clearly feared would be disappointment or worse, disgust. But what happened next would become a story that neither of them, nor anyone who witnessed it, would ever forget. Sarah had sworn off dating after her divorce 2 years ago. Her ex-husband had left her for someone younger. Someone without the complications of a woman who had spent years grieving the children she could never have. The doctors had been clear, the diagnosis final, and the dream of motherhood had died slowly and painfully over the course of her marriage until it had taken the marriage itself with it. She had thrown herself into her work as a social worker, pouring all the maternal love she had nowhere else to put into the children who passed through her office, the ones from broken homes and impossible situations. She had convinced herself that this was enough, that romantic love was a chapter of her life that had closed. Then Marcus had appeared in her life through a mutual friend, and his messages had been different from the start. He wrote about his daughter Emma with such tenderness, such fierce devotion, that Sarah found herself drawn to him in a way she hadn't expected. He had been honest from the beginning about being a single father, about how his wife had died from cancer when Emma was just 2 years old, about how his whole world revolved around this little person who had his eyes and her mother's smile. If you believe in second chances, in the power of unexpected moments to change our lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more stories that remind us of the goodness that still exists in this world. As Sarah stood frozen in the doorway of the coffee shop, Marcus began to speak, his voice trembling with invulnerability that made her chest ache. He explained that Emma's grandmother, the person who usually watched her on Saturday afternoons, had fallen ill that morning. He had tried to find another babysitter, had called everyone he could think of, but it was last minute and everyone was busy. He had almost canceled, had typed out the message 3 times, but Emma had seen his phone and asked why he looked so sad. When he had tried to explain in the careful way you explain disappointments to a 6-year-old, Emma had looked up at him with those enormous brown eyes and said something that had made his decision for him. She had said that if this lady was important to him, then maybe she wouldn't mind if Emma came too, because Emma could be very quiet and good, and she promised not to ruin anything. Marcus had felt his heart break and mend at the same time, and he had made a choice that went against every piece of dating advice he had ever received. He had decided to be honest, to show Sarah exactly what his life looked like, to risk everything on the hope that maybe, just maybe, she would understand. Sarah felt tears beginning to form in her eyes as she listened to him, but they weren't tears of disappointment. She walked slowly toward the table where Emma sat, her small fingers wrapped around a purple crayon, trying so hard to be invisible, to be good, to not be the problem her father clearly feared she might be. Sarah sat down across from the little girl and asked her what she was drawing. Emma looked up shyly and showed her a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. When Sarah asked who they were, Emma pointed to the tallest figure and said it was her daddy, then pointed to the smallest and said it was her, and then her finger hovered over the middle figure, the one with long hair, and she said very quietly that she didn't know yet, but she hoped maybe it could be someone nice who wouldn't be mad that she had to come today. The afternoon that followed was nothing like the first date Sarah had imagined, and yet it was more perfect than anything she could have planned. They ordered hot chocolates and pastries, and Sarah found herself naturally falling into a rhythm with Emma, asking her about school and her favorite books and the elaborate stories she told about her stuffed animals. Marcus watched them with an expression of wonder, and something that looked like relief so profound it was almost painful to witness. Sarah learned that Emma loved butterflies and hated broccoli, that she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up, and that she still slept with the blanket her mother had knitted for her before she got too sick to hold the needles anymore. She learned that Marcus read to Emma every single night without fail, that he had taught himself to braid hair through YouTube videos and practice on dolls, and that he had turned down a promotion at work because it would have meant less time at home for bedtime routines and school pickups. As the hours passed, something shifted in Sarah's chest. like a door she had locked tight, was slowly creaking open. She watched Marcus cut Emma's cookie into careful pieces and wipe chocolate from her chin with such practiced tenderness, and she saw not the complications of dating a single father, but the beauty of a man who had chosen to show up fully as himself, risks and all. When Emma asked if she could go look at the fish tank in the corner of the coffee shop, Marcus nodded and they both watched her skip away, her beaded braids clicking with each bounce. In that moment of privacy, Marcus turned to Sarah and began to apologize again, but Sarah stopped him. She reached across the table and took his hand, and told him something that made his eyes widen with surprise and then fill with emotion. She told him about her marriage, about the infertility that had slowly poisoned everything good between her and her ex-husband, about the years of treatments and disappointments and the special kind of grief that comes from mourning children who were never born. She told him about the empty nursery she had finally packed up last year, about the baby clothes she had donated to the shelter where she volunteered, about how she had convinced herself that maybe motherhood just wasn't meant for her in any form. And then she told him that watching him with Emma today, seeing the way they moved together like a unit that had weathered storms and come out stronger, had shown her something she hadn't known she needed to see. That family wasn't always about biology or traditional timelines. That love could appear in the most unexpected packages, on the most ordinary of Saturdays, in the form of a nervous man and his brave little girl who were both just trying their best. Marcus sat very still as she spoke, his hand warm in hers, and when she finished, he asked her a question that hung in the air between them like something precious and fragile. He asked if she wanted to stay, to really stay, knowing that any future between them would always include Emma, would always mean being flexible and patient and dealing with the beautiful chaos of a child's needs coming first. He asked if she could handle the science fair projects and the princess movies and the inevitable teenage years that loomed in their future. He asked her this not because he doubted her, but because he needed her to be sure, needed to know that she was choosing them with eyes wide open, understanding that he and Emma were a package deal now and always. Sarah looked over at Emma, who was pressing her nose against the fish tank and narrating an entire story about where the fish were swimming to and what adventures they must be having, and she felt something click into place in her soul. She turned back to Marcus and told him yes. Yes to the complicated schedules and the parent-teacher conferences. Yes to being patient while Emma learned to trust someone new. Yes to building something together that honored the mother Emma had lost while making space for new love to grow. Yes to all of it, the messy and the beautiful and everything in between. When Emma came back to the table, Sarah asked her if she would like to go to the park nearby, and Emma's face lit up with a joy so pure and uncomplicated that Sarah felt her heart expand to accommodate it. As they walked together, Emma's small hand slipped into Sarah's with a trust that felt both terrifying and sacred, and Marcus walked beside them with tears streaming unashamedly down his face because he had prepared himself for rejection, for awkwardness, for this date to be the end of something before it could begin, but instead he had found someone who saw his greatest vulnerability and chose to embrace it. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminds you that love can find us in the most unexpected ways, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to remember that beautiful surprises still exist. Your engagement means the world to us. The months that followed were not always easy. Emma had moments where she pulled back, where the fear of losing another important person made her test Sarah's commitment. Sarah had days where she doubted herself, where she worried she didn't know enough about parenting, where the weight of stepping into a child's life felt overwhelming. But they worked through it together, the three of them building something new from honesty and patience and genuine care. Marcus taught Sarah the intricate patterns of Emma's moods and needs, and Sarah brought a lightness to their routines that had been missing, a reminder that joy could exist alongside grief. Emma slowly began to call Sarah by her name with increasing warmth, and then one day, 6 months after that first coffee shop date, she drew another picture of 3 stick figures and labeled the middle one without hesitation. Before we finish this story, please take a moment to leave a comment below telling us what you would have done in Sarah's situation. Your thoughts and stories matter to us. 2 years later, Sarah stood in a small garden surrounded by friends and family, wearing a simple white dress while Emma stood beside her in purple, carefully holding the rings on a small velvet pillow. Marcus had asked Emma first if it would be okay, if she would be happy to have Sarah become a permanent part of their family. and Emma had said yes before he could even finish the question. As they exchanged vows, Sarah promised to love them both, to honor the mother who had come before her, and to build a family based on choice and commitment and the courage to show up as your whole self, complications and all. That first date, the one that could have been a disaster, had instead been the beginning of everything. Because sometimes the moments that scare us the most, the ones where we stand vulnerable and exposed, are the exact moments when real love finds room to take root and grow into something more beautiful than we ever imagined possible.